So in this video we're going to talk a little bit about service providers. What I've done is I've combined all of the code from our previous examples into one JavaScript file just so we can see everything all together, and I've used the code folding here to just collapse all the different parts so we can see it all at once. So config, that's where we have our routing. If we open that up, you can see my state provider. I've got the home and the list, home.list state. And inside each of those, there's the resolve I was using as a service to get at something called title list, which later on inside the controller I could use and refer to as title list. So there's the actual object, and this is the name of the provider coming from resolve. Now, that's just one example of a service that we're using. We can create other kinds. So value, constant, factory. Now we have used factory before, but these are three different kinds of services that we can use. A value, you give it a name, and then you have an object. It can be a number, it can be a string, it could be an array, it can be an object. Basically some data that's tied to, it's like a variable name. Then I can use this variable name, whatever it's going to be. This can be used inside of my controllers. So let's say in the main controller I wanted to make reference to this. I can come down here, open up my main controller and say I'm also going to use the thing called ABC, and then I'll put my variable ABC in here. Now I'm using the values provider here, and I can update this. That's the difference between value and constant, is that values can be changed, constants can't be changed. The one advantage to using a constant, though, even though it can't be changed, is if you need to, you can use a constant inside of the config. Values can't be used inside the config. They're not created until after the config has run. So let's say this constant I wanted to use, I could come in here and add URL and then put in that actual constant here and then use it somewhere inside my code. So constant we can use in the config, value I can use in the controllers, constants I can use in the controllers as well. I have the option. Now a factory, this is a method. We give it a name. You can see here that, oh, this was previously called movies, now it's called ABC. So if I wanted to, I can use my value inside my factory here as well. That's what this is doing. This is importing that, and then I can use it inside here if I want, pass it in, or I don't need to pass it in. I'm going to be including that inside here. A factory, just like in our last video where we talked about closures and factories, we're returning a function. This function will live under this name, and I can call on it whenever I want. So movie picker, if I go into main and I include movie picker, and then I'm using it inside here, movie picker, this now becomes something that I can use inside of here. Movie picker, and there we are. That's going to run this function. So by passing it into my controller, what I've done is the function that was returned, this factory ran under the name movie picker. It gave me this object, which I can then use right in here. So movie picker is going to run this function, and it's going to return to me, ignore that, it's going to return to me one of the items out of my array. Movies, again, that was this ABC thing here. There we go. This value being passed in, it's an object. So what I'm doing is I'm randomly picking one of the movies outside of here, and that's what this is. Movie picker is going to return one of these movies randomly. Actually, I'll have to change all these names through here. So this is no longer movies, this is ABC, and ABC dot favorites. There we go. That's the array. Favorites is the array up here. So I have a factory called movie picker that's going to run. It's going to return this function to me, and it has reference to this ABC object, which is my object that contains an array called favorites. I'm going to pick a random number between 0 and the highest number in that array, and I'm going to randomly return that. So this is using this function that came back from that factory. The factory created this for me. If I wanted to use it down here as well, I could. Just add it to the list. So movie picker is the name. And then we throw it on to the end of our variable list. There we are. Now I'm using it in both controllers. They're sharing a factory, which is giving them another copy of this thing, which we can call at any point inside of here. And, well, that would be returning a name, so we should catch that over here as well, even though we're not doing anything with it. There we go. So this variable now has a copy of one of the names of one of the movies, and we were able to do that inside both of our controllers. One last thing I wanted to mention in here, the timeout is something else that I imported and I'm using here. Timeout is a function. It's just like the window.timeout in standard JavaScript. This is 4 seconds later, and what I'm doing is I'm redirecting. I'm changing the state. So I'm saying state is going to change to the carré character, which means go to the parent, and that's the same thing as me writing state.go home. That would change the state as well. So 4 seconds after I've picked a name, it goes back to the home state. Yeah, that's about it. Inside here, as I previously mentioned, the reason that we're using the array syntax and listing all of these is just in case we minimize. If we weren't minimizing, we wouldn't have to list all of these inside of here.